Good morning, and welcome to Wake Up American Ministries. And we have a very exciting, encouraging. I'm going to call it a prophetic update, even though it's not directly prophetic. But we'll get into more of that here in just a second, and I'll explain what I mean by that here as we get into it. And you hear in the news, and you hear things about the Abraham Accords. You read something about the Abraham Accords and how Israel has certain uh, agreements with other nations and what that does. And what does that mean to us in the church, to believers, to Christians? Well, I'm going to try to explain a little bit of that this morning, and then we'll see how all of this ties in. There goes my voice wanting to cut out. But anyway, in essence, what happened was Donald Trump, when he was in office, and Israel and the UAE, they all came together, and they this declaration was written, and then as a result of this declaration, countries, or some countries at least, began to say, hey, we agree with that, we want to be a part of that. And so these Israel and these other countries began to sign agreements. And the thing was, and I never took the time to read them. So, um, I'm thinking, because we know about the prophecy in Daniel 9 and 27 about Daniel's 70th week and the tribulation period and the covenant or the agreement or treaty or whatever that's supposed to be signed with many nations is one of the things that it says there. And many nations have come on board with this, and it appears, because a lot of people are asking, is this the thing spoken of in Daniel 9:27? Well, I'm here to tell you today, at this point, it's not, and I'm going to explain to you why here in just a few minutes. But anyway, so far, I'm going to give you just the essence of what it means. First of all, it is called a peace treaty. It also involves trade relations, economic growth, the establishment or the reopening of embassies for diplomatic communications, a commitment to solving the Israeli-Palestinian issue, in other words, a two-state solution, which you've heard a lot about that in the news, where the Palestinians will essentially have their own land. Now the thing is, whether it's Jordan or whether it's Saudi Arabia or whether it's Egypt or whoever in the Middle East, nobody wants the Palestinians. Essentially what the thinking here is, among most of them, is to give the Palestinians land or acreage or settlements or whatever you want to call them in Israel, which is currently the main conflict that's happening right now around the Temple Mount and east of that. A lot of trouble has been there this year because they just can't seem to come to, peaceful relations. But anyway, what this is doing is it's laying the groundwork for future peace agreements to be signed by other countries. Now, right now, Israel has agreements with the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco. So, what is the significance in this thing? Well, first of all, let me tell you where you can find these, and you can download them for yourself, and then you can read them, because they're not very long. Some of them is one page. There's one, I think, that might be 3 pages or a little more, but they're not very long, and it gives you an idea of what all is included in this, whether it's building consulates and getting visas and air traffic, because before in many of these countries, any plane that was owned by Israel could not fly to that country or even fly over their airspace. So now this agreement is allowing some of this travel to take place, where planes from Israel can go land in Bahrain, or a plane from Israel can go land in the United Arab Emirates or whatever, and then vice versa. So it's very historic in that regard. But anyway, you can go to www.state.gov or just type in Abraham Accords, and if you'll scroll down, like when I googled it, it was about the third one down. You can click on it, and it's actually the State Department website, and you can actually download each document that's signed by each country, each representative. Some of them had more than one representative, and you can read in detail what it is. So it's very informative, and it gives you an idea of what it is. But in each of those, and I was really surprised because you don't hear this in the media, because I didn't really think it was a peace agreement. I just thought it was for, for trade and those kind of things that we were just talking about. But then in the title of the documents, it actually says the word peace. And then some of the documents actually use the word peace and security several times throughout the document. So what do we know about that? Well, we know that this agreement that's going to be signed, that's referenced to in Daniel 9 and 27, states that it's going to be a peace treaty or a covenant of peace. So that's one of the key things there that you would see. But anyway, I'll read that more to you in a second. But it's very significant for these reasons. First of all, these treaties give recognition to the fact that the Israelites, that the Jews, have the right to exist in the land of Israel. Now, why is that significant? Well, because if you know anything about history, Jews have been persecuted and they've been run all over the world, whether it was the Spanish Inquisition, or whether it was the Ottoman Empire, whether it was the Romans, or whoever. The Jews have been dispersed throughout all the world. And then on May 14th, 1948, Israel, after World War II, Israel declared its independence and declared themselves to be a free state. It's been conflict ever since, time and time and time again. Israel's been dragged into a war, some a little long, some only 6 days, but regardless it's been constant conflict. So what these peace agreements are designed to do is come to an acceptance of the fact, okay, y'all have a right to live, we have a right to live, so we agree with one another that we're going to try to work this thing out, we're going to live in peace. And since we're going to live in peace, we want to help each other prosper. So it's very significant in that way. It gives recognition and cooperation between the three major religions, between Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Because according to these agreements, now we know what. Why is it called the Abraham Accords? Well, because we know that Abraham had two sons. One was named Ishmael, which, remember, Ishmael was rejected by God because he was not the seed of Sarah, he was the seed of Hagar. So when Ishmael departed away from Abraham, he went out on his own, but because he was of the seed of Abraham, Ishmael was blessed, and Ishmael had 12 sons. In other words, they became the 12 tribes of the Arab world, which is what we have today. And then there was Isaac, who was Sarah's son, who received the blessing, and he had 12 sons. And ever since, it's been conflict between the 12 tribes of Isaac, or Jacob rather, Jacob. There was Abraham, Isaac, then Jacob. Isaac had Jacob, Jacob had 12 sons, so I'll get it right. So Abraham had Isaac with Sarah, and then Isaac had Jacob and 12 sons from Jacob. Okay, so I corrected myself. But anyway, so the 12 tribes have basically, you might as well, been at war with each other ever since. There's just been turmoil. But anyway, so now what these agreements are doing is saying, hey, we're all descendants of Abraham. Judaism came from Jacob. Islam came through Ishmael. And of course, we know that Christianity came through Christ from Judaism. So what these agreements do is gives recognition to each of the three major religions that have sprung from Abraham. Hence the Abraham Accords. All right. So there's other countries that are strongly considering joining the Abraham Accords. One is Oman, Indonesia, and Saudi Arabia was on the verge of signing an agreement with Israel, but something happened 2 weeks ago whenever President Biden went to Israel, visited with Israel, then he went to Saudi Arabia, and because of his indecisive remarks about how they were going to deal with Iran, how involved we were going to get or be, it kind of shook things up a bit. And so right now, Saudi Arabia has backed away from signing the Abraham Accords, which would have been significant if they had done so. But now they've backed away from that and they're rethinking it. Whether they'll come back to the table and talk, I have no idea. We'll just have to wait and see how that works out. But it just shows you how strong of influence that America has in the Middle East politics and how important it is that we stand strong with Israel and we support them, you know, and not that we want another war, but Iran doesn't need nuclear weapons. And if it takes a military intervention to prevent that, well, you know, all I can say is so be it. But we need to be supportive of Israel and we need to be strong in our commitment. Now, even though Saudi Arabia and some of these countries down there, even though they're Muslim countries, there's two sects of worshipers within the religion of Islam. You have the Shias and then you have the Sunnis. And essentially they hate each other because they have a difference of philosophy on how things are, who Muhammad is, and all these things. But don't be surprised when they all come together, because in you know, for years and years and years, centuries actually, they've had a common hate, and that is of the Jews. But it seems that appears to be changing, but then for how long? So I'm going to read to you. I guess what I'm trying to do here is answer the question: is the Abraham Accords the treaty spoken of in Daniel 9 and 27? Well, the answer to that is no. I've already given you that clue, but now I'm going to tell you why it's not. So I'm going to read this, and it said, this is Daniel 9 and 27, and he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. So, what do we see here? This is Daniel's 70th week, and we know here, from those of you that study prophecy, 1 week is the equivalent of 7 years. So, one thing that these, even though there's been many that have signed these accords, which qualifies one aspect of this verse, there's no time limit specified within these treaties. So, since there's no time limit, then obviously that disqualifies it from being this particular treaty. But what is it doing? I firmly believe this, that because of the Abraham Accords, that the table is being set, that in the days to come, regardless of whatever event may spur it or make it happen, that it'll be possible for these countries to come together and say, you know what, we're going to make this peace agreement, we're going to make it last, but we're going to give it a trial run for 7 years, and we're going to see how things go. Well, this is the ushering in of the Antichrist. Do I believe that the Antichrist is already here on earth and working? Oh, absolutely I do. But who is he? Well, if I could tell you that, that would make me the second smartest person in the world. Of course, God being the first. But I don't know, and we won't know. And we won't know that until the midpoint of the tribulation period. All right. So, something else that's not specified, and Irvin Baxter and Jack Van Impe and these people have taught this, that this peace agreement that's going to be spoken of in Daniel 9 and 27 is also going to allow for the rebuilding of the third temple on the Temple Mount, which currently there's no temple. Now there are synagogues, but there's no central temple like back in the days of Solomon and in the days of King David. King David, Solomon, and then go on. The second temple was built after the first one was destroyed. There hasn't been a central temple since AD 70 when the Romans destroyed the Second Temple. So, currently on the Temple Mount, there sits the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is where a lot of conflict is centered over, especially this year. For some reason, a lot of conflict, fighting, people being arrested, people being hurt, rioting, and all kind of craziness. But anyway, so in this, it says this, that this peace agreement will allow for the temple to be built on Mount Moriah, which is the Temple Mount. We just talked about that. But there's no mention of that in any of these accords. So that's another reason why these accords are not part of Daniel 9 and 27. But what they are doing, again, is laying stepping stones for all of this to come to pass when the time is appointed. When is that going to be? I don't know, but we can clearly see, if you're looking through prophetic eyes, to see that all of this is coming together, that many nations are beginning to agree with Israel, and won't, because Israel is one of the leading countries in the world in technology and medical advancement and all sorts of cool inventions that people around the world want to be a part of and invest in, and that can happen only whenever people that before had been distant come closer to them and agree with them and want to interact with them in a way they never have before. So it's really significant in that regard. So when is all this going to happen? Well, Daniel 9:27. Again, I don't know. I wish I did. I wish I could tell you that in this year, on this month, on this day, that the rapture is going to take place and we're going to be all taken up out of here, or at least those believers, rather, that believe in Christ and have been faithful in Christ are going to be taken up and out of here. We don't have to deal with this junk anymore. I wish I could tell you that, but I can't. All we can do is watch what's taking place in Israel with these accords and see how it goes. The main thing is to be ready to meet Christ whenever he calls. But I'm going to give you a little bonus information today, because even though this is not part of the Abraham Accords, it is also another milestone in Israel-Middle East relations. There was a document that was signed by Pope Francis and Grand Imam Ahmed El-Tayeb on February the 4th, 2019, and this document is the document on human, I can't remember now what it says, human progress or something like that. Anyway, Google that, and you can, it's a very interesting read. Now read it carefully. It is several pages. There's a lot of language in it, but read it very carefully, because you will see, and I don't want to be the spoiler alert thing here, and I don't want to tell you what I think it means. I want you to read it for yourself, because it's very, very interesting, and how this too is laying the groundwork for Daniel 9:27 to be fulfilled in the building of the third temple. We'll say, well, what are you talking about? Well, in this document that Pope Francis and his Grand Imam agreed on, February the 4th, 2019, again, Google that, download it, and you can read all about it. It allows for the construction of 3 worship centers to be built on the same parcel of land, and when you read the description of it, it says actually on the same foundation. So this is very significant here, because what it does, and this is being built currently right now, scheduled to open, if they're on a schedule, sometime this year, is the Abrahamic Family Center, or Family House. Abrahamic Family House is what it's called. Google that. You can read all about that. But what it's going to do is, or is doing, is it's allowing for 3 worship centers, one for Islam, one for Christianity, and one for Judaism, to all be built on the same site for the free worship of those 3 major religions under the name of Abraham. So why is that significant? Well, you think about it. If they build this, and they are, and you got Muslims and Christians and Jews, or at least those Jews that believe in still following the law of Moses, Judaism, if they can all come together on the same side at the same time and they can all worship together in peace and harmony, then why can't it be done on the Temple Mount with the rebuilding of the third temple? Can the same thing be accomplished there? So, very, very interesting development here that maybe this is a trial run to see what's going to happen. So, anyway, a lot taking place. Keep your eyes on Jerusalem. I just wanted to give you that because, folks, it's all coming down to the end. And we need to be ready. We need to be aware of the signs of the times. And we need to keep our eyes on Jesus. And we need to keep pressing forward and doing those things that He's called us to do. So that's what we're doing here today, is we're bringing you this prophetic update to make you aware Jesus is coming soon. Get ready to meet Him. And that's all we have for you this week. If you would like, because I know some people are going away from Facebook, you can always type this in for YouTube, Wake Up America Ministries. It will bring us up. You'll see our picture there. And you can subscribe if you're leaving Facebook and you want to continue to hear these messages. They're normally posted there on Monday, and you can go there and you can hear the things that we bring to you. Thank you for your support. May God be with you. We love you guys, and Lord willing, we'll see you next week.